Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by conveying the regards and best wishes of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On behalf of the government and people of Nigeria, I wish to commend the convening of the Summit of the Future to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. With most of the Global South significantly behind in the implementation of the SDGs 2030 agenda, it is imperative we adopt measures to address challenges impeding development. This is especially important in Africa, where economies are most vulnerable due to historical imbalances in the international multilateral system. The SDG Index estimates that only about 16% of the SDG targets are on track to be achieved. We must, therefore, ensure that today's adoption of the Pact for the Future is backed by a real willingness to fulfill outstanding commitments. With the remaining 84% of the SDG targets for 2030 yet to be achieved, countries in the global north must do more to support sustainable development in the global south. We're optimistic that these targets can be met if commitments are backed by action. However, in the event we fall short of achieving the SDG targets by 2030, we strongly believe that the deadline should be extended. Excellencies, the collective resolve and support of the international community could help Africa to address regional challenges, particularly with regard to sustainable financing for the SDG implementation. We must, therefore, take action-oriented measures to engender the following. 1. Reform of the UN Security Council to ensure a permanent seat for Africa. 2. Reform of the international financial architecture to promote an inclusive, non-discriminatory, and transparent international trading system, as well as to implement comprehensive debt relief measures. 3. Fulfillment of all commitments under the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, particularly to facilitate sustainable financing for development. 4. Support for local indigenous production and export from Africa. 5. Strengthening of measures to ensure timely repatriation of illicit financial flows and assets. 6. Adoption of a UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation to ensure African economies are no longer shortchanged through tax evasion and exclusion in global tax decision-making. 7. Support for the actualization and implementation of the UN Secretary-General's SDG stimulus proposal, which includes a provision of $500 billion per year for the Global South. 8. Commitment to fossil fuel energy transition. 9. Access to the climate loss and damage funds for the Global South. And 10. Bridging the digital divide between the global North and South through technology sharing and capacity building, including in areas such as artificial intelligence, to ensure no one is left behind. It is also imperative the international community develops measures to enhance a common understanding on cryptocurrency, given its significant impact on the global economy, as well as its links to transnational crime and money laundering. In concluding, I wish to reaffirm Nigeria's commitment to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our collective resolve to accelerate the SDGs through the Pact for the Future should result in concrete measures and solutions to the challenges of the Global South, most especially Africa. I thank you.
I thank Minister for Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, and now give the floor to His Excellency Albert Shigiro, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Development Cooperation of Burundi.
Monsieur le Président,
President, distinguished delegates, all protocols observed. I can't begin to express the joy, happiness, and privilege that I have at this time as I'm taking the floor at this Summit for the Future on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Evariste Ndayishimiye, President of the Republic of Burundi. who gave me the honour of representing him at this meeting, to which he wishes fruitful and constructive outcomes. President, in addition to the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is weighing heavily still on our economies, and the negative effects of climate change, frozen wars, terrorism in several regions of the world, geostrategic positioning, trade tensions, and the rejection of multilateralism and the erosion of international solidarity, these are all real and existential threat to us all. Today, more than ever, the world seems to be walking further and further away from the ideals of peace, security, and solidarity and cooperation, which, as you know, were the guiding compass of the founding fathers of the United Nations from 1945. Collective rules are regularly flouted, yielding to muscle diplomacy and demoting preventive diplomacy, the spirit of compromise and international solidarity, to the background. In these conditions, President, what else could we expect other than the disintegration of the world into warring blocs, as we're seeing at the moment? What else could we expect other than the weakening of multilateralism, increasing exclusion and inequality, the rich getting richer, and the poor getting poorer? President, the situation is grave, very grave indeed, and no one can say with any certainty what we can expect in several years or indeed several decades. Nevertheless, we should not be excessively discouraged. We should not be led to inertia. On the contrary, President, we owe it to ourselves to act individually and collectively, to calmly tackle the challenges of the world today in order to build solidarity and a peaceful, stable, prosperous world, and thus spare future generations from the horrors of war, and to avoid repeating the dark history that humanity saw before the creation of our shared organization. In order to do this, President, we must respect the commitments made in regional and international fora, whether this be regarding protecting the planet or promoting international peace and security and human rights, digital cooperation, whether it be the fight against all forms of exclusion, the creation of a climate of trust, as well as the far-reaching and comprehensive reform of global governance to make it more legitimate, inclusive, effective, and better adapted to the realities of the contemporary world. President, this is why my country, Burundi, adheres to the spirit and letter of the Pact of the Future and its annexes, as negotiated and adopted by our respective governments this morning in this very room. Nevertheless, it is a matter of public record that signing a pact is one thing, and implementing it is another. The political will of all stakeholders, the respect for commitments on all levels, as well as salvaging multilateralism, all of this is the only secure and sustainable way to make sure that this pact isn't just another document, but it should be a kind of compass which guides us together towards a peaceful, inclusive, prosperous world to benefit current and future generations. Thank you for your kind attention.
I thank Minister of Foreign Affairs and Development Cooperation of Burundi, and now give the floor to His Excellency Hussein Awad Ali, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sudan.
In the name of God, peace and blessings be upon his prophet. Mr. President, Your Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Your Highnesses, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, in the name of the delegation of Sudan on holding this important summit. We wish you all the success. We reiterate our support to the effort of the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to reform this international organization. This is more important and urgent now in light of the crises, tensions, wars, and threats witnessed today. These threaten not only our current generation, but the future generations and our planet as well. Mr. President, the challenges, crises, their reasons and complications are crystal clear. All statements addressed the challenges and problems, whether in this chamber or elsewhere, on the hope of reaching solutions and settlements, and also fearing their dangerous repercussions today and in the future. In light of the above, I would like to share with you the current issues which, in our point of view, represent a huge challenge to our organization and to our developing countries. It requires comprehensive and urgent solutions. First, there is a need to strictly adhere to the UN Charter, its principles and purposes. We must avoid highlighting certain principles and not the others, or interpreting such principles and rules. The stability of our international order is underpinned on the respect of the UN Charter, especially the non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, the respect of state sovereignty and its territorial integrity, and the non-use of force in international relations. It's regrettable to see such double standards and selectivity in implementing these principles. This underlines the credibility of the international system. We regret that certain legal mechanisms are used to achieve such political objectives. This is what we are subjected to today. Second, it's important to adopt a comprehensive reform of the international financial architecture to counter the challenges and problems facing developing countries, post-conflict countries, and those in special situations, especially due to poverty, conflicts, or climate change. Some are also subject to sanctions, which undermine their ability to achieve the SDGs. There is a need to counter poverty in all its forms. We must ensure the right to development and put it at the forefront of our priorities to ensure that no one is left behind. We have seen a great consensus in the different negotiation rounds on the Pact of the Future document, and especially the reform of the international financial institutions and their modernization. This would help us to achieve the desired objectives and ensure an equitable representation to the developing countries, their participation in decision-making processes, access to capital and financing, and ensuring long-term assistance. It would also encourage investment and the addressing sovereign debt as well as the debt restructuring. We must mobilize resources and promote mechanisms to ensure technical transfer, our technology transfer, and building the capacity of future generations. Third, we believe that the United Nations can be an appropriate podium to lead the reform of the international financial institutions. Fourth, the joint future of humanity depends. The sound was cut off.
I thank Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sudan. And now give the floor to His Excellency Carlos Pinto Pereira, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Communities of Guinea-Bissau. I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sudan. I thank Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sudan and now give the floor to His Excellency Carlos Pinto Pereira, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation Communities of Guinea-Bissau.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the Republic, I have the honor to transmit the message he had for this assembly. It is with great pleasure that I address the Summit of the Future, a crucial event that gathers global leaders to discuss our common path to a better tomorrow. I thank the Secretary General and all the organizers for this opportunity to share Guinea-Bissau vision on the opportunities we have. We live in an interconnected world where climate change, poverty, inequalities, and health crisis require collective response. Renew our commitment with the multilateral cooperation and to strengthen our determination and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals until 2030. Guinea-Bissau, as all countries in development, has significant poverty, food insecurity, and impact of climate change affect daily our population. In the meanwhile, we see opportunities. We believe that with the support of the international community, we can implement innovative solutions that will benefit not only our country, but the whole region and the world. Education is the basis to build a more prosperous future. Invest in education, in a quality education for all. It's essential to give capacity to our population and promote sustainable development. We need to guarantee that all children and youth have access to an education that can prepare them to the future. The youth are the force of our future. Today, youth are the leaders of tomorrow, and it is crucial that we give them the opportunities and the tools so that they can contribute fully to the societies. We should involve youth in the decision-making processes and guarantee that their voices are heard and valorized. Decisions we take today have an impact in future generations. It is our responsibility to guarantee that we leave a better world to our children and grandchildren. We should adopt policies that support sustainability of environment, social and economic sustainability, and ensure that future generations can live in a better world with justice and peace. To tackle today's challenges, we should reform our governance systems. The Summit of the Future is a turning point where we can adopt concrete measures to turn our institutions more inclusive, representative, and we should guarantee that no one is left behind and that all countries, independently of their size and economic growth, can have a say in our common future. Guinea-Bissau is committed to its part, and we are working hard to strengthen our institutions, to promote peace and stability, and implement policies that can promote sustainable development. However, we recognize that we cannot achieve that alone. We need continuous support from international communities, from the United Nations to achieve our objectives. Excellencies, the Summit of the Future is a unique opportunity to reaffirm our commitment and to build a path for a more fair and just future. Guinea-Bissau is ready to cooperate and contribute to this global endeavor. Together we can Thank you very much.
I thank Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation Community of Guinea-Bissau, and now give the floor to His Excellency Abdoulaye Diop, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali.
Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of His Excellency Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition, Head of State and President of the Alliance of Sahel States, bringing together Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The summit that brings us together for this pact is coming at an appropriate time. Our common organization, the United Nations, was indeed created to preserve future generations from the scourge of war. It is regrettable to see that after almost 80 years, we have never been as threatened by existential challenges as we are now, but most of them are avoidable. The proliferation of tensions and crises in the world, particularly terrorism, poverty, climate change, inequality, illnesses, geopolitical confrontations, and neo-colonial domination and hegemony have sorely tested our framework for multilateral action incorporated by the United Nations itself. This now seems to be a world of yesterday. We had a lot of hope in the international forces deployed in our country, but 10 years on, we have had to conclude that this was a failure, and the government has had to strengthen its defense and security capacities itself. This has made it possible for us to make tangible progress in reconquering our territory and preserving our national integrity and protecting our population. Here I'd like to renew the thanks of my country to countries and organizations, including the United Nations, that have expressed their solidarity with my country in the light of the cowardly terrorist attacks carried out in my country on the 17th of September last. And we thank the United Nations and the Security Council for stating that it's important for all member states to act to fight terrorism by respecting their international commitments, and particularly not to support sponsors of terrorism. They must be brought to justice. The Summit of the Future is a new departure for international cooperation in an international multilateral framework that can offer a bright future for the whole of humanity. But we have to act together to renew our commitment for thoroughgoing change to the multilateral system that has governed world affairs up until now. In this regard, it is essential that decisions meet the aspirations of our peoples, particularly those of the Global South. It's also essential that we have the courage to proceed to reform our current multilateral institutions, particularly the Security Council and international financial institutions, in order to adapt them to the realities of our time so that they are more inclusive, more just and fairer, but above all, more representative. The issue of young people is very important, and that must be a major concern for us. My country, Mali, is attached to the principles of our charter, namely the non-interference in domestic affairs of states and respect for the sovereignty of states. Mali also pays particular attention to the issue of financing for development, particularly sustainable development. We feel that the digital issue is also essential, and my country has undertaken an ambitious digitization program of public services. Finally, we believe that the Pact for the Future is very ambitious nationally and internationally, but it must go beyond a mere declaration or promise. It must meet the aspirations of current and future generations. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali, and now give the floor to His Excellency Ramadan Abdallah Mohamed Gok, Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in the revitalized transitional government of national unity of the Republic of South Sudan.
Your Excellencies, esteemed leaders and distinguished participants, on behalf of the government and the people of the Republic of South Sudan, I am honored to address the Summit of the Future, a platform that invites us to shape a collective vision for a peaceful, equitable, and sustainable world. As a young nation still navigating the challenges of post-conflict recovery, South Sudan looks to the future with hope and determination. We are committed to playing our role in ensuring that future generations inherit a world where peace, opportunity, and dignity are accessible to all. In this regard, we wish to highlight the following priorities. South Sudan's journey has taught us that peace is a base of everything and the base of progress. We call upon the international community to continue supporting efforts for peaceful conflict resolution, dialogue, and reconciliation in our country and in other countries. The future we envision must be free from wars, and we believe in the power of diplomacy and cooperation in achieving lasting peace. Climate change remains one of the most urgent threats to our future. In South Sudan, the effect of the climate change, flood, drought, and unpredictable weather erupted the livelihood of millions of our citizens. We call for global solidarity in addressing climate change by investing in sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, and environmental conservation to secure a resilient future for our people and the world. The key pillar of future lays in our youth. South Sudan young population is the greatest asset that we have, and empowering them through education, innovation, and entrepreneurship is very essential. South Sudan is committed to fostering a diversified economy that reduces our dependency on oil and open doors for innovation, agriculture, and regional trade. We seek partnership that encourage inclusive economic growth, job creation, and infrastructure development to elevate the standards of living for all our citizens. As we gather at this summit, we stand united with the global community in our commitment to shaping a future that is built on hope, justice, and solidarity. South Sudan is ready to contribute to the global effort of creating a world where all people, regardless of background, geography, of everything, have the opportunity to thrive. Let's seize this opportunity and moment to build a future that we all aspire to. I thank you all.
I thank Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in the revitalized transitional government of national unity of the Republic of Sudan, South Sudan. And now I give the floor to the African Union.
Excellences, Monsieur le chef d'État et
Excellencies, heads of state and government, Your Excellency Philemon Yang, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to commend the Secretary General for his tireless commitment to overcome global challenges, which are more complex every time and every day, and they threaten the existence of humans and other life forms more and more. The Summit of the Future, here we are, created and organized under your impetus, dear Antonio, and it can claim the honor of having accurately reflected the issues at stake. It completes the picture and the context through providing the best solution to successfully overcome the obstacles in our way. The solution is the adherence of all member states of the United Nations to the principles of multilateralism, solidarity, not hostility, the respect, not scorn, peace, not war, sharing, not exclusion, freedom, not servitude, equality, and not supremacy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, clearly declining for a certain amount of time. Over recent times, the multilateralism has been eclipsed under unilateralism and has led to a return of a policy of power struggle. We welcome the Pact of the Future because it builds its deployment around a rejection of this approach. It plans on renewing and strengthening the confidence of states in multilateralism. This position has been constantly defended by the African Union, and hence its interest to fully adhere to the 5 sections of the Pact, and indeed the 60 actions recommended by the Pact, particularly the Global Digital Compact, cut across the 7 aspirations of the 2063 Agenda. For each of these fields, the African Union has created strategies that are then translated into plans of action, even though their implementation has been hobbled significantly by the scarcity of financing and deficiencies in governance. And there's no point in hiding this. Therefore, these are problems that are familiar to us in Africa, even if Asia and Latin America, in certain respects, are still in the same conditions of precarity that the African people are. The African Union welcomes the philosophy of the Pact, which seeks to take into account the specific aspects of developing countries, island states, landlocked countries and LDCs, the majority of which are in Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while the African Union welcomes this holistic approach that embraces and reflects the whole landscape of the challenges to come, it is no less does it also ask profound questions on the ways of implementing all of these actions. A lot of promises have been made, even though they have not necessarily been followed up on. Let's hope that this time the wealthy keep their promises, and Africa and other parts of the world themselves can be sources of intelligence, motivation, willingness and necessary solidarity for it to become an emergency economy and save their economies. Safeguarding an environment that is enabling for this and the conditions for success of the digital revolution are the best keys for the future. The hymns currently sung today by hundreds of millions of young Africans is resonant, and this is a question of renaissance. The next G20 in Africa will be represented, where Africa will be jointly represented by the African Union and the South and Republic of South Africa. The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank the representative of African Union and now give the floor to Her Excellency Diana Elena Mondino, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship of Argentina.
Mr. President, este ámbito.
This forum is for us to think constructively about the challenges that the international community has and how we can address those challenges. This is a special opportunity to express our points of view. Argentina has decided to operate a society where people are responsible for their actions but can act in freedom, and where we have equality for all. We want to address the challenges of terrorism, the threats to territorial integrity, democracy, international security, and economic development. In order to do this, we take as our guide the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Deviations from these purposes and principles create problems, not just in a given country that loses its own freedom, but also for those countries interacting with that country, and we see this all the time. It's our obligation to remember what it says in our national constitution. And since 1953, we have liberal principles which we should never have departed from since 1973. And we are convinced that an agenda should not be made up of principally of declarations. We need to state how we're going to get to where we want to go. And for this, we need economic freedom. Hunger will not give us economic growth. Development means that we need to respect institutions and respect private property above all. Our young people will have a better future if we respect life and freedom. Argentina has embarked upon this path, and we've carried out our own realistic diagnosis, as hard as that may have been, and we are beginning a serious transformational reform of the state, opening ourselves up to the world and assuming the commitment to be able to say proudly that we want to be one of the freest countries of the international community. And in exercising that freedom, my country would like to recall that agendas such as this that bring us together today are made up of aspirations, which, legally speaking, are not binding, and every state, as they exercise their sovereignty, has the right to interpret these things autonomously, taking into account the various realities, capacities, and level of development of each country, and respecting its national policies and priorities, such as stated in Resolution 7001 of the General Assembly. However, very many points of the pact and its annexes have certain reservations. This document has been worked on now since 2022 with our government, and the current Argentine government is in the process of advanced negotiations. Nevertheless, we have proposed various constructive actions which were not always taken into account, and that meant that on those points we had to disassociate ourselves. However, when it comes to the Pact of the Future, these things aren't an obstacle for Argentina. On the contrary, we want to have wings for our growth in freedom. Mr. President, my country reaffirms our commitment to the peaceful settlement of disputes and an international or rules-based order based on democratic values. We want to demonstrate that the only fight that's worth fighting is the cultural one, showing that it's possible to have peace between nations, and we hope that the outcome of this exercise will lead us to a safer and a more prosperous world. You can be sure that my country is prepared to continue, as we always have done, working together to think again together about how we can face the new challenges that are occurring and challenging us as humanity. Not just words, but work, work and more work. That is the best and really the only solution. We want to be free to choose a better world, and I'm sure that all members of this assembly also want to guarantee this for all of the men, women and children that make up our common home. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship of Argentina. And now I'll give the floor to the representative of International Development Law Organization.
Mr. President, Excellencies, it is a pleasure to participate in the summit on behalf of IDLO, the only global intergovernmental organization exclusively devoted to promoting the rule of law to advance peace and sustainable development. The commitments in the Pact for the Future, together with the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations, can help tackle our biggest challenges and build a renewed multilateralism, but only if we work together to make them a reality. IDLO's 40 years of experience, partnering with some 100 countries, has shown us that the rule of law is key to delivering on the bold ambition of this summit. Let me share 3 reasons why. First, the rule of law is critical to rebuilding public trust. The unmet demand for justice is at the root of multiple crises around the globe. The rule of law helps ensure fairness, accountability, and transparency. People-centered justice systems protect the rights of the least powerful and give people confidence that institutions are working in the interests of all. The inclusion of women, youth, and other historically excluded groups is essential for the whole of society approaches needed for lasting peace and sustainable development. Secondly, the rule of law, most prominently reflected in Goal 16, can accelerate progress across the whole 2030 agenda. The rule of law principles of inclusivity, equity, and non-discrimination are incorporated throughout all 17 SDGs. Effective laws and accessible and accountable institutions are essential for implementation. Finally, the rule of law is key to reinvigorate and repurpose multilateralism for the 21st century. The rule of law at the international level, as enshrined in the Charter, guarantees the sovereign equality of member states and is the basis for the preservation of international peace and security. A multilateral system that is fit for the future requires rule of law-based solutions to deal with complex transnational challenges, including climate change and the regulation of frontier technologies such as AI, to ensure that progress is rights-based and avoids creating new forms of inequality. For these reasons, IDLO welcomes the many references in the Pact to the rule of law, justice, human rights, and the promotion of gender equality. We hope that these words will be backed by tangible action and financing in national budgets and ODA. We look forward to the linkages with the Financing for Development Conference next year. IDLO remains committed to collaborating with all partners to work towards a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world through the rule of law. There is no better investment that we can make in our collective future, and it is the best way for us to stand in solidarity with future generations. Thank you.
I thank representative of International Development Law Organization. I now give the floor to the representative of United Nations Development Program.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Today, on the occasion of the Summit of the Future, many will perhaps be forgiven for wondering how people outside of this hall will receive the pact when we live in a world divided and scarred by conflict, with fault lines such as growing poverty and inequalities, climate change, and the destruction of our natural world. Many of the speakers, distinguished speakers, have addressed themselves to these today. Yet, amidst these tremors, the young people of our world, of our communities, and the young people that I have met here during the past 2 days, the Action Days in New York, have truly stood out to me. Their faith in a better tomorrow holds, and their determination to build it as well. So, what is the United Nations Development Programme's unique offer to put the 5 areas of the Pact for the Future into action? First, on sustainable development financing, our efforts include supporting 86 countries at this moment in implementing integrated national financing frameworks to channel billions of dollars to key areas from job creation to gender equality, the energy transitions, nature, and just one stream of engagement to shape the new SDG financing ecosystem that has been so central also in the Pact. Second, over 2 billion people currently live in countries affected by conflict and instability. Our global development support, alongside the humanitarian response, continues to provide a proven pathway out of these crises by enabling millions of people to access essential services such as water, clean energy, and livelihoods, and ultimately enabling them to still have a perspective of the future. Third, UNDP is working to ensure that young people have a meaningful say in the future areas like climate change and our climate promise. This initiative is now the vehicle through which the UN family is mobilizing support to 125 countries to advance their NDCs that can still give our next generation the hope to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Fourth, in this age of opportunities, digital technologies spread quickly but not evenly. Yesterday's SDG Digital Day was a remarkable convening of leaders from the entrepreneurial world, big business, but also startups, government, regulators, policymakers, citizens. Our ability to turn this opportunity that the summit also with the Compact has focused on is central to the promise to these young people. UNDP's expertise will help advance the Global Digital Compact to realize that brighter digital future for everyone, everywhere, by accompanying dozens of countries on their digital transformation pathways. I would like to thank all countries represented here in the General Assembly Hall for the confidence and the trust that you continue to place in the development promise of the United Nations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of United Nations Development Programme, and now I give the floor to the representative of World Health Organization.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I have 3 minutes and 3 requests. First, a commitment to promote, provide, and protect health. Health is not created in clinics and hospitals. It's created in streets, homes, communities, schools, markets, workplaces, and parliaments. It's created in the air people breathe, the food they eat, the water they drink, the condition in which they live and work, and in our changing climate. When people do need care, they must be able to access the health services they need when and where they need them without facing financial hardship by paying for care out of their own pockets. Second, a commitment to a pandemic agreement. The COVID-19 pandemic showed that when health is at risk, everything is at risk. The outbreaks of Mpox in Africa demonstrate once again why the world needs the WHO pandemic agreement, a shared approach to shared threats. There are those who say the pandemic agreement will cede sovereignty to WHO, giving it the power to impose lockdowns or vaccine mandates. This is not true. It's a fake information. The agreement is being negotiated by countries for countries and will be implemented in countries in accordance with their own national laws, period. And third, a commitment to peace. This time last week, I was in Adre, on the Chad-Sudan border, which more than 640,000 Sudanese have crossed in search of safety and food. These are among more than 12 million people displaced. The conditions are indescribable, the needs overwhelming, and the international community is not giving this crisis the attention it deserves. WHO is working with our partners to deliver aid to Sudan and meet the health needs of both refugees and the host communities. But what the people of Sudan need more than aid, like the people of Gaza and Ukraine, is a ceasefire, a political solution, and peace. Because there is no health without peace, and there is no peace without health. A commitment to promote, provide, and protect health, a commitment to pandemic agreement, and a commitment to peace. Thank you so much.
I thank the representative of World Health Organization, and now give the floor to the representative of United Nations Office for Project Services.
Mr. President, this year's Summit of the Future marks a crucial opportunity for the international community to deliver on the promise of creating a more peaceful, fairer, greener, safer future for people and the planet. It is a moment of realism in the face of the many challenges our world faces, but also a moment of hope and determination to work together to overcome those challenges and build a better future for all. Today, multilateralism received a boost. The Pact of the Future is 3 years' worth of important analysis, discussions, and negotiations. It represents an ambitious response to the youth's aspirations on peace and sustainable development. UNOPS is committed to supporting the outcome of the Summit of the Future. Through our focus on practical solutions, we support our partners to respond to conflicts and crises, deliver sustainable development, and advance climate action, responding to needs now while building the foundations for a sustainable and peaceful future. We do this by supporting our partners to implement projects through our expertise in infrastructure, procurement, and project management. Mr. President, we already have a vision of the future we want for people and the planet, yet our progress is painfully slow. Finance and policy gaps are a part of the problem. But to succeed in delivering, we all need to better understand and respond to the challenges of implementation, particularly where needs are greatest, including in fragile and conflict-affected contexts. UNOPS stands ready to bridge the gap that exists between ambitions and reality on the ground, always working in partnerships, always driven by the commitment to fight inequalities and to provide opportunities for the most vulnerable. We take this opportunity to reiterate our commitment to young people and future generations as part of this journey. We are determined to support efforts to create a world where every child and young person can thrive and reach their full potential. A world where the voices of the youth are heard and where they are an active part of our collective efforts to find sustainable solutions to our shared challenges. Our future hangs in the balance. We owe it to the present and future generations to act collectively, responsibly, and decisively, to deliver peace and prosperity for people and the planet. UNOPS is committed to this effort. Thank you.
I thank representative of United Nations Office for Project Services, and now I give the floor to the representative of United Nations Industrial Development Organization.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, we strongly welcome the adoption of the Pact for the Future. Member states have provided clear guidance. Now we need to implement it. At UNIDO, we are committed to leading concrete solutions for inclusive and sustainable industrial development in line with our mandate within the UN system. We specifically welcome the strong call in Action 4 to close the SDG financing gap by scaling up investments in sustainable industrialization. The landmark outcomes of all the major conferences this year are telling us the same story. To achieve the SDGs, developing countries need to invest in transforming their economies and industrialize. Countries that do industrialize are making the biggest strides in poverty eradication, ending poverty and wealth creation, both historically and today. Every job in manufacturing creates, on average, 2.5 jobs in other sectors of the economy. Action 2 and 3 on poverty and hunger depend on realizing this strong nexus, which holds true in an increasingly digital world. Equally, Action 9 on climate change requires that we prioritize the decarbonization of heavy emitting industries for current and future organizations. And there is good news. Industry is already part of the solution and a driver of green innovation today, with industrial firms holding nearly 60% of green patents globally. And finally, as this summit aspires to reform global governance, it must also help to set standards for the global economy. Fair and sustainable supply chains are a must, and Action 29 is critical in this regard. Excellencies, UNIDO is already actively working towards these and other actions in the Pact. In addition to flagship initiatives on industrial decarbonization and green hydrogen, we have launched new ones, such as the Global Alliance and Partnership for Responsible and Green Minerals. I'm also pleased to invite you to our upcoming flagship initiatives this year. The Multilateral Industrial Policy Forum 2024 in Riyadh next month, and the World Without Hunger Conference in Addis in November. Allow me to conclude and reiterate that UNIDO is committed to working with all of you to implement the Pact through concrete solutions on the ground. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sovereign Order of Malta.
Mr. Speaker, heads of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Sovereign Order of Malta is one of the most ancient institutions in the world, with more than 900 years of service to those in need. And we are honored to join in this summit and to subscribe to the Pact for the Future. We share with a sense of hope and determination that inspires the Pact in looking in positive terms and with confidence at the future. Technology and scientific innovation, artificial intelligence in particular, may carry substantial improvements and advances for humankind. We should never lose sight, however, of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged groups in our societies. Leave no one behind corresponds indeed to the core and the inspiring source of the historical mission of the Sovereign Order of Malta, and must represent an imperative for the whole international community. The overarching goal of the eradication of poverty should thus remain at the heart of international efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. No progress at the economic and social level can be achieved without preserving and strengthening the system of multilateral cooperation centered around the United Nations. We renew our appeal for respect for international humanitarian law. Tragic elements and events connected with wars, conflicts, internal strife, where civilians and relief operators are subject to and even become deliberate targets of military attacks. Violence and acts of inhuman treatment are wholly unacceptable. The Sovereign Order of Malta is determined to continue its mission for the benefit of those who should not be left behind. We serve the sick, the poor, the disadvantaged on every continent, based upon the principles of neutrality and impartiality, without discrimination as to nationality, religion, or gender. Among our most significant emergency operations, I wish to recall those in Ukraine and now Gaza, where we provide food and other aid in cooperation with the Lateran Patriarch of Jerusalem. The Order attaches utmost importance to the goal of safeguarding and promoting religious freedom. Religions, dialogue amongst them, and the work of faith-based organizations can be powerful vehicles of conflict mediation, social advancement, and sustainable development. Together, we can accelerate progress toward a future where dignity, human rights, access to health, and education are realities for all, leaving no one behind.
I thank the distinguished representative of Sovereign Order of Malta, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, we heard from 3 young people, including Monica, a bright woman, a refugee. I don't have much to add to her wise and beautiful words, but let me reflect from the same perspective, as the future also belongs to all the young people who, like Monica, have been forced to flee their homes because of our collective failure to make peace. And so these young people are now forced to dream of a new future away from their countries or their communities. What will those dreams be? What will be the dreams of 120 million refugees and displaced people? We have the opportunity to help them shape the future, especially those for whom it brings fear as much as hope. We have the opportunity to say that we refuse to let refugees bear the price of our failures, that we refuse to abandon those countries and communities that have been hosting refugees decade after decade. And what a chance we have to include refugees and all displaced people, young and old, to open doors, schools, clinics to them with support from the international community so they can contribute to the communities hosting them while we work together on finding solutions to their plight. Let us all, donors, host countries, the private sector, the UN, civil society, displaced people, all work towards the vision of the Global Compact on Refugees, where refugees are seen as an opportunity and not a burden, and they can think of a future in which they are not refugees. And let me add UNHCR's voice to Monica's voice, to the voice of all the displaced, and join them in the call for peace. At this summit for the future, we must be able to imagine and work towards a future without refugees. But without peace, Mr. President, this will simply not happen. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of United Nations Environment Program.
Excellencies, as environmental, technological, and social change join forces to disrupt human, planetary, and economic health, we must not just prepare for the future, we must shape it so that coming generations can live in peace, prosperity, and equity. This summit and the Pact for the Future that emerges from it can help us do exactly that. The Pact acknowledges that there can be no sustainable future, no economic stability without a healthy environment. Action 10 calls for a shift to a world in which humanity lives in a harmony with nature, a world with healthy lands, water, and oceans, a world with stable climate, a world free of pollution, a world in which humanity sustainably and equitably uses resources. Now, commitments have already been made to deliver this shift in many multilateral agreements that cover the 3 planetary crises: the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature and biodiversity loss and desertification, and the crisis of pollution and waste. And a new commitment is coming as negotiations on an instrument to end plastic pollution will conclude in Busan this November. UNEP calls on all member states to do their utmost to forge a strong, impactful agreement and quickly move to the adoption, ratification, and implementation. To deliver on all agreements and strengthen sustainable development, we must operationalize the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. We must commit to financial and economic transformations that build equity and resilience. We must ensure circularity and sustainable consumption and production, including in the energy transition and digital transformation. And we must adopt One Health approaches that improve human, animal, and planetary health at the same time. And finally, we must identify and respond to the emerging challenges that cause disruptions. member states can count on UNEP's science, our support, and our advocacy as they seek to deliver on the actions that will be reflected in the outcomes of this summit, and so shape a sustainable future for the benefit of every person on this planet. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Nations Development Programme, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Telecommunication Union.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today is a momentous day for digital, following yesterday's amazing Digital Action Days, as just mentioned by the UNDP administrator. Congratulations to member states for delivering the Pact of the Future, the Declaration of Future Generations, and the Global Digital Compact. Today, you have sent a powerful message to the world that our future is digital and that we can and we must write it together. ITU, as the UN Agency for Digital Technologies, will be with you every step of the way. We stand ready to support the implementation of the Compact, just as we did 20 years ago with the World Summit on the Information Society. Now, like then, our common mission is to bridge the digital divides, because we can no longer tolerate that in an age of unimaginable digital opportunities, where innovation in areas like artificial intelligence and space continues unabated, 1/3 of humanity is still unconnected without a voice. Nor can we accept that countless others are left behind because for them, the digital experience isn't affordable enough, isn't relevant enough, or isn't safe enough. And now, like then, we must balance the challenges that we face with the opportunities before us. Today, we say no to digital inequalities and yes to digital opportunities. For ITU, this means ensuring that the radio frequency spectrum and the associated satellite orbits, the building blocks of advanced global communications, are shared equitably and sustainably for all of humanity. Strengthening international standards at a time when they are taking center stage in global governance discussions, and supporting global digital development from AI to cybersecurity, digital literacy, e-waste, emergency telecommunications, regardless of where countries are in their digital journey. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of development, the future of humanity is digital. As we look to 2030, let's turn the vision of the Pact for the Future and its Global Digital Compact into a lasting reality. Let's redouble our efforts to advance universal meaningful connectivity and sustainable digital transformation, ITU's 2 strategic goals, and the cornerstones of an inclusive and responsible digital future. Let's rescue the SDGs with digital. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Telecommunication Union, and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Food and Agriculture Organization.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good late afternoon. The world faces a daunting food security and nutrition picture. More than 730 million people worldwide faced hunger in 2023, and more than 2.3 billion will moderate or severely food insecurity. We are not on track to achieve any of the global SDG targets. And we see that huge inequality persists along the various dimensions, including wealth, gender, rural areas, and in accessing assets and opportunities. The future we want is a future that is food secure for all, for our planet, for our prosperity and for the future generations to come. We want a future where the right to food is the best human right secured. For this future, we must transform our agri-food system today to be more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable. The future will be determined by more equitable agri-food system, and I'm pleased that this is recognized by the proposed pact for the future. We need to invest integratedly on the four betters: better production, better nutrition, better environment, better life, leaving no one behind. This is at the core of the effort work. Allow me to share three key elements for the way forward. One, we must step up effort to achieve the SDGs by 2030. And the second, we must focus on fostering and promoting innovation, public-private partnership, and more cost-effective investment. Three, hunger and food insecurity can be defeated through the effective collaboration between all the partners and effectively utilize each other's expertise and resources. And by leveraging our comparable advantages, we have to do together. Effort will continue to do its part to ensure a better future we want. Have a nice evening and enjoy healthy food. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Food and Agriculture Organization and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Council of Europe.
Mesdames et Messieurs,
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Council of Europe, represented here, has a mission to promote and protect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law throughout the European continent, and of course, beyond the continent, with everyone who shares the same values. This is what guides us. What guides us is the European Convention on Human Rights, ratified by all of our 46 member states. That convention is interpreted by the European Court of Human Rights. And we share a strong commitment with the United Nations for peace. And this is a relationship that is ongoing with the United Nations. We're very proud in this regard to be contributing to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. But the Council of Europe also has its own goals. Our current priority is to support Ukraine, which is one of our member states. In the beginning of this year, the Register of Damage has become fully operational. This is a register that receives contributions for the loss and damage caused by the war of aggression waged by the Russian Federation. This is a first tool, but it is absolutely necessary as a step toward an international mechanism for compensation. Here will play a central role, as we will play a key role when it comes to any tribunal aiming to judge the crime of aggression. We're going to be working together to implement a plan of action for resilience, recovery, and reconstruction in Ukraine as well. The European Convention of the European Court of Human Rights is the only international jurisdiction that, as of now, has ruled on human rights violations in the context of the war. There are other tools the Council of Europe has, of course. These have allowed to address the challenges of our time. I could mention the Istanbul Convention to prevent and combat domestic violence and violence against women. And I could also mention the very recent Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence. This is an unprecedented treaty, the first of its kind, which aims to protect human rights in the context of technological evolution, which is currently underway. At this anniversary of the Council of Europe, I would like to close the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe. I would like to conclude with advocacy for the greatest number of countries to sign and ratify our key conventions, because at a time when democracy is backsliding, we need to do ever more to promote our values through words and in deeds. This is the best way to bring about a better future and more democratic future for our citizens. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Council of Europe, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of World Intellectual Property Organization.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, throughout today, we have heard world leaders speak about the magnitude and gravity of the challenges ahead of us. While they are truly sobering, we must not lose hope. Instead, let us remember that it's often in times of crisis that we are at our most innovative, and that we must now harness the power of human invention, innovation, and creativity to build a more resilient, prosperous, and sustainable future. All of this will require us to transform what intellectual property or IP means. While in the past, IP was viewed as only relevant to the largest corporations in industrialized countries, this is changing. 70% of global IP filings now come from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, a huge change from 50% just 20 years ago. At the same time, as more and more countries use digitalization, entrepreneurship, research, and technology to drive growth, IP is shifting from a technical area of interest only to experts to an increasingly important cornerstone of economic and trade policy, a catalyst for growth and development, and a key enabler for addressing our common global challenges. In response, WIPO is transforming the global IP ecosystem. Allow me to highlight 3 areas of work. First, we are evolving the global IP regime so that it is more inclusive and vibrant, as well as bringing the global community together to address cutting-edge issues like AI and IP, and the use of IP as a collateral. In May, we made history when all 193 member states agreed by consensus on a new treaty on IP, genetic resources, and associated traditional knowledge. This is not just a victory of multilateralism, but also shows that the global IP system can be both pro-inclusivity and pro-innovation. Second, bringing IP to all. In the past 2 years, we have launched WIPO's first IP and Gender Action Plan, our first IP Youth Empowerment Strategy, and transform our development assistance, including a graduation package for LDCs, and rolling out over 80 customized projects that have uplifted thousands of beneficiaries around the world. These efforts are meeting growing demand for IP knowledge and skills. Over the past 4 years, the WIPO Academy, the world's largest provider of IP education, trained over 500,000 people, over 80% from developing countries. Third, connecting the world. Our international registries facilitate the cross-border movement of hundreds of thousands of technologies and solutions each year, while WIPO Green, our global tech matching platform for climate change technologies, accelerates the deployment of such solutions around the world. Covering 130,000 technologies from over 140 countries, it is the largest climate change tech platform in the UN system. To conclude, IP is no longer just about technical IP laws, but also a catalyst for progress, opportunity, and sustainability. WIPO pledges to work with everyone to harness the power of IP, innovation, and creativity to support the aims of this summit. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of World Intellectual Property Organization, and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Organization for Migration.
Excellencies, distinguished representatives, on behalf of IOM, I commend and thank the United Nations Secretary General for convening us all today, and the co-facilitators of the Pact of the Future, the Declaration on Future Generations, and the co-facilitators of the Pact for the Future, the Declaration of Future Generations, and the Global Digital Compact, and everyone involved in the process for leading negotiations on this landmark document. This summit really embodies the power and potential of multilateralism. IOM, as the coordinator of the UN Network on Migration, supports an agenda for change to rebuild trust and strengthen international cooperation in tackling the challenges of today and tomorrow. Generation after generation of people have moved in search of a better life, and we know many more will move in the future. With this in mind, we cannot take for granted the promise of migration as a solution as we face major global transformations and crises. We at IOM believe that investing in safe, regular, and orderly pathways for migration can help reduce irregular migration, accelerate inclusive growth, strengthen decent work, bridge demographic shifts and labor gaps, and foster sustainable development. The 2030 Agenda, the Global Compact for Migration, the Secretary General's Action Agenda on Internal Displacement are all clear and existing frameworks that can and do guide our work. All of us here today have a collective responsibility to protect and respect the human rights of all migrants. We must live up to that responsibility. We at IOM are delighted to contribute to this milestone. I reiterate our unshakable commitment to support and work with people on the move and all our partners towards safeguarding our shared future. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of International Organization for Migration, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Parliamentarian Assembly of the Mediterranean.
سيد الرئيس أصحاب الساعة.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, since its inception in 2005, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean and its members from the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions have been deeply committed to ensuring the implementation of the UN Charter and its deliberations through innovative mechanisms to ensure effective and coordinated follow-up. Today, I'm honored to renew the commitment of the PAM and its member parliaments to the implementation of the objectives of the Summit of the Future, the Pact for the Future, and the Future Generation Declaration, and the Declaration on Future Generations and the Global Digital Compact, to, among others, support the establishment and functioning of stronger and more influential multilateral institutions by all member states without exceptions in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the international law obligations. Second, ensure effective responses to current and future challenges such as food security, climate change in collaboration with key stakeholders. 3, promote an open, free, and secure digital future anchored in universal human rights. 4, ensure the interests of future generations are taken into account in national and global decision-making processes. Yesterday at the PAM side event, we announced 2 concrete initiatives through which the Assembly will contribute to achieving these ambitious goals. First, the creation of a permanent parliamentary observatory of the Global South for the Sustainable Development Goals based and managed by Morocco. Second, the creation of a permanent global parliamentary observatory on the misuse of AI and emerging technologies, served by the PAM Center for Global Studies, and that will be a platform for monitoring, analyzing, and promoting effective legislation, principles, and criteria so that these tools are not used by terrorists and criminal groups for their own malicious purposes, but for the benefit of all humanity. Mr. President, speaking of the future requires us all to work to overcome current obstacles, and in the Mediterranean, there is a continuing war, regardless of its reasons. Its results will bring more extremism, violence, and hate. It is the war against Gaza and the innocent victims on both sides. We call upon you to give primacy to the sound of reason and to end this conflict and to return to negotiations to implement the resolutions of the international community and to attain the two-state solution, an independent state of Palestine and a safe state of Israel. I thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of Parliamentarian Assembly of the Mediterranean, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the future belongs to our next generation. The future they inherit, however, depends on the choices we now make. With 2/3 of the world's population living in Asia and the Pacific, the decisions taken in the region will largely determine our collective future. The region accounts for nearly half of the world's economic activity, owing to its large, young, healthy, and educated labor force, availability of capital, and widespread introduction of technology. Millions have been lifted out of poverty. Out of our 53 members, only one remains low income. Out of the original 14 least developed countries, only 5 will remain by the decade's end. Despite the various divides and uneven progress towards sustainable development, its trajectory has undeniably been a success. A future with even greater possibilities, however, calls for a transformative change to this model of development. Given its significant economic size, the region must reduce its carbon emissions through every means possible. With the median age expected to reach 40.5 by 2050, those above 65 will account for a fifth of the total population by 2050. Without further expansion of labor force, we must now fully draw upon the resources that we already have, including women, seniors with the interest in remaining in the workforce, and persons with disabilities. With the anticipated drawing down of savings and pensions by retirees and increased demand for social safety nets, an equitable social security system must be established while we are still benefiting from the demographic dividend. Addressing financing gaps as well as debt servicing and mobilization of private sector investment now will be critical. Given the declines in labor force as well as domestic savings, improvement in the quality of life will increasingly depend on the harnessing of technology. Equitable access to new technology, including AI, will shape our collective future. Robust governance and universal connectivity are prerequisites to this inclusive technological transformation. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our future depends on the potential that we invest in our youth. They must see possibilities, participate in decision-making, and seize opportunities before them. As the Regional Commission for Asia and Pacific, we identify emerging issues and propose solutions, among others, on energy transition pathway, sustainable financing, and inclusive businesses. We must pass on a future with even greater possibilities to the next generation, and we stand ready to support the implementation of the Pact of the Future. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Economic Commission for Europe.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are building the future today, step by step, and this is why a strong emphasis on action is essential. We have agreements in place, we have now the Pact for the Future, and it is really the time to implement them. But first, looking at these days' developments, including this morning discussions, it seems right to be reminded for whom we are doing this. We are doing this for the children and youth of today, for our future generation. A generation that hopefully would know to agree better than we do, or that we did today, when matters are concerning the survival of our planet or the sustainability of our future. That is why I believe that our work on education for sustainable development, a comprehensive program on which at UNICE we have been intensively working for over 10 years, should be prioritized, so that when the youth of today will have to take decisions tomorrow, they will know to put environment and social concerns first before economic or political gains. I encourage you all to do the same, to invest and support education for sustainable development. Dear colleagues, the success of our commitments for the future depends on us, yes, but it also depends on our understanding of the need to have an inclusive approach. The actions are taken by people of all ages, by women and men, by communities, by local and regional authorities in the first place. They are on the front lines, enabling them, trusting them, and partnering with them in the Pact of the Future implementation is not only a way to be successful, but it is the only way. In 2 weeks' time in Geneva, we will convene the Cities Summit of the Future. It's a unique platform in the UN, a forum of mayors, where they come in their own capacity, not as part of governmental delegations, really to discuss and agree how to implement the Pact in a very practical way, addressing challenges of urbanization, social housing, or mobility. And I'm confident that the final statement to the mayors will be one to serve both as a roadmap but also as an inspiration for some of our global commitments. That is why, once again, I would like to reiterate that action is required, and it is required at multiple levels, partnering with both public and private sector, involving international, regional, and national actors, local communities, and individuals. A third and final observation. Being a regional commission, an economic commission, UNICE, with a very strong normative footprint, reaching globally when it comes to transboundary water management, air quality, environmental impact assessment, industrial accidents, road safety, transport, classification of critical minerals, there is one thing we understand, that our biggest challenge remains to be the competition over natural resources. A competition
Agradezco a la representante.
I thank the representative of the Economic Commission, Social Commission for Europe, and I now give the floor to the Global Fund for Fight Against AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria.
Excellencies, as a worldwide partnership to defeat HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria, the Global Fund welcomes the Pact for the Future that shines a spotlight on the urgency of increasing efforts to achieve the 2030 agenda and to accelerate progress towards better health for all. We applaud the leadership of Namibia and Germany in co-facilitating the Pact of the Future process, including engaging with civil society and communities. Only a pact that champions multilateralism and empowers communities and civil society to be meaningfully involved in global governance can safeguard our collective future. In a world where about 4.5 billion people, more than half of the global population, are not fully covered by essential health services, we know that health is fundamental to eradicate poverty, achieve gender equality, economic growth, and to ensure peaceful societies. Now is not the time to shy away from our commitments, but to take advantage of every opportunity to bolster progress towards universal health coverage and raise the bar so we can ensure a healthy future for all. Now more than ever, we need to ensure that global health stays at the center of the international agenda. We hope that the Pact can help elevate our common aspirations for better health and well-being of present and future generations. We applaud the Pact's focus on climate change as an existential issue of our time, in fact, the biggest global health challenge of our time. The phenomenon is destabilizing the foundations of human health, deepening inequalities, and leading to the emergence of and spread of infectious diseases. Ramping up our collective response is an urgent imperative in today's challenging context of interconnected crisis. We commend the focus on closing the SDG financing gap. As a unique partnership of government, civil society, the private sector, and people affected by the diseases, the Global Fund stands ready to step up the fight to achieve global goals and to prepare for and respond to future risks. The Global Fund is an example of the transformative power of communities and civil society, a partnership powered by equity. And as we come together to applaud the Pact for the Future today, we call on the international community to ensure that this leadership is recognized and upheld. We hope that the Pact for the Future and the urgency and enormity of current challenges will continue to push the global community to find a new course, one that can broaden and deepen multilateralism to create a more healthy, fair, and peaceful world for today and for all future generations.
I thank the representative of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. And I now give the floor to the Latin American and Caribbean Development Bank.
Excellencias, es un honor.
Excellencies, it's an honor to deliver this message on behalf of the CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and Caribbean, as an observer organization of the United Nations. We are committed with the provisions of the Pact for the Future and the Digital Pact adopted this morning, and specifically the adjustments in the international financial system that was referred to. The hope of new generations and the well-being of the population of the planet require rapid and decisive action. Echoing the invitation to this summit convened by Secretary General to decide on what to do and focus on how, rather. We believe it's important for multilateral development banks and regional ones to be strengthened at all levels and to be able to meet current challenges. For this, the international financial architecture must be efficient in deployment of greater resources to achieve sustainable development. The Global South requires differentiated approaches, innovative, flexible solutions with appropriate financing to confront the triple transition. The size and characteristics of current challenges were not could not be predicted when the SDGs were established. I'm talking about the high level of indebtedness, climate change, and the pandemic. And of course, we in the Development Bank believe that if we had greater capital, we could have the potential to increase resources. It could be a reliable channel to provide financing to meet specific challenges. Thirdly, to generate efficient programs to those who most need it. We will continue with our role to assist countries by optimizing their tax systems, easing their debt burden, and improving investments. As the CAF is ready to take its part in implementing the renewed agenda that has been discussed at this summit to contribute to the well-being of future generations. Thank you very much. I thank the representative of the Caribbean and Latin American Development Bank, and I give the floor to the International Labor Organization.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the ILO welcomes the summit, which is a unique opportunity to forge pathways towards a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future for both current and future generations. In our interdependent world, no country can solve global issues alone. Multilateral cooperation is critical, not only to tackle global challenges, but also to advance the national interests of each and every country. This is essential for the world of work. The world needs a more equitable distribution of economic benefits, more inclusive labor markets, and the universal access to social protection. This requires the multilateral system to work together and the involvement of non-state actors, including workers and employers' organizations. Allow me to recall the ILO Constitution says, no lasting peace could be attained without social justice. Hence, ILO, with all its constituents, including the workers and employers organization, embrace the ambition of the UN Pact for the Future, including the necessity and the necessary reforms of the global governance and the financing for development agenda. I would like to specifically recall that in 2023, 20% of young people were neither in employment, nor in education, nor in training. And that, as we are speaking, 3.8 billion people have no access to any single social protection. and over 2 billion people are struggling to make a living in the informal economy. With the adoption of the UN Pact for the Future, you can count on the ILO, as we have done in the past 100 years, to continue to fight for access to decent work and social justice for all, especially the most vulnerable, as it's critical for lasting peace and sustainable development. Thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the representative of the International Labor Organization, and I give the floor to the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to have the opportunity to be part of this important gathering and address this plenary session of the Summit of the Future, representing the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, comprising of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Achieving the post-2015 development agenda, including all the sustainable goals, in the remaining period of 2030 will require an ambitious, comprehensive, holistic, and transformative approach with respect to the means of implementation, synergizing the different means of implementation. It is require enhanced and revitalized global partnership in addressing the shared resources and investment gaps. Regionalism can play a crucial role in the endeavor to achieve the accelerated SDGs. It is through the regional cooperation that we can harness our collective strength, share best practices, and address the specific need of our communities. Each region has its own cultural, economic, and environmental context, and it is essential that we tailor our approaches to fit these diverse landscapes. By fostering the regional partnership, we can create a synergies that amplify our efforts and drive a meaningful progress towards SDGs. We need to secure the significantly enhanced level of resources allocation by combining the traditional development assistance and innovative financing solutions. Development partners must meet the pledge of the official development assistance, and while doing that, must avoid the double counting of the resources and both climate and development financing. In the meantime, there is a strong need to recognize the importance of addressing the diverse needs and challenges faced by the countries in special situation, in particular the least developed countries and the countries in transition to the middle income. This group of countries are the most vulnerable and resource-constrained group of countries, need enhanced global support to overcome the structural challenges they face for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Such support should be provided on multiple fronts in synergetic manner, including development assistance, market access, technology transfer, FDI, and debt relief. Mr. President, the linkage between the global prosperity and South Asia, which forms nearly 1/4 of the humanity, cannot be overemphasized. The region, being highly vibrant and diverse, holds an immense potential for global prosperity. With almost half of the population of 1.8 billion below the age of 24, South Asia will have the largest youth labor forces in the world until 2040. This offers the region the potential to drive the vibrant and productive economies. South Asia is on the verge of
Agradezco por su intervención.
I thank the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, and I give the floor to the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia.
Dear President of the General Assembly, distinguished leaders, esteemed delegates, it is both privilege and profound responsibility to address this high-level gathering. Summit represents a moment of introspection for the global community, and I'm very excited to speak to you as the Secretary General of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, SICA in short. The idea to convene SICA was proposed by Kazakhstan from this very rostrum on October 5th, 1992. Having been founded on the core principles of multilateralism, dialogue, and trust, SICA unites 28 member states covering 90% of Asia, as well as 10 observer states and 11 observer and partner organizations. Through the implementation of SICA catalog of confidence-building measures, we are fostering dialogue among nations with diverse backgrounds, creating an environment where disagreements can be managed through trust, mutual respect, and most importantly, on equal footing. Interaction in these dimensions contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals. Having reached a mature level of institutional development, SICA has permanent institutions like Youth Council, Business Council, Think Tank Forum to discuss common issues, challenges, and ways to address them. In 2022, the SICA Fund was established in order to mobilize funding to implement projects in a wide range of areas. Excellencies, let me outline the initiatives of President Tokayev of Kazakhstan, which is the current chair within the SICA framework. The SICA Ministerial Conference on Environmental Issues, held on August 28 this year, adopted a high-level statement that reflects member states' dedication to advancing collaboration and addressing critical environmental issues. In a few days, we will organize a rally of volunteer movement leaders from SICA countries under the Youth Council. The partnership network of leading universities of SICA will be established rather soon in December at the Ministerial Council meeting in Baku. Member states currently discussing two other ideas, creating the Council on Sustainable Connectivity to address global economic challenges and transforming the Finance Summit into a permanent platform to strengthen cooperation among financial sectors of our member states. Esteemed delegates, organizations like SICA are crucial in addressing global challenges at the regional level and can serve as a valuable outreach platform for the UN. This summit of the future gives us the opportunity to rethink our structures, reassess our priorities, and, importantly, to strengthen our mechanisms for cooperation. Together we can build a resilient, equitable, and sustainable future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, and I now give the floor to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель,
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first of all on behalf of the Secretariat of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to express our gratitude for the invitation and the opportunity to speak at the summit for the future. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization was created over 20 years ago. Today it has 26 member states with different status. We call them the SCO family, and over half the population of the world is represented in the organization, a quarter of the surface area and a quarter of the economy. And the organization has a huge potential, economic and scientific potential, as well as a huge reserve of natural resources. Working based on Chapter 8 of the UN Charter, the organization is committed to the principle of openness and the Shanghai spirit, which means mutual trust, equality, consultations, respect for cultural diversity, and striving for development. Our organization excludes a confrontational or block-based approach in dealing with regional and international issues. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're witnessing tectonic changes in global policies and international relations. We believe that the best response to today's challenges is to unify efforts to shape a more representative, more democratic, equitable, and multipolar world order based on the principles of international law, with the central coordinating role of the United Nations. We call on countries, regional organizations, and structures to set aside a policy of confrontation and mutual threats. It's important to establish honest, open dialogue to unify our efforts to effectively counteract the challenges that are common to all of us. In this context, this summit is extremely timely. At the Astana summit of the organization in July of this year, an initiative was adopted for unity, for development, which is the contribution of our organization to the summit for the future. We hope that the international community will join us. Member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization play a leading role in the area of sustainable development. 2025 has been declared the year of sustainable development by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I'd like to also note that achieving peaceful life for the future generations is the primary task for all of us. We have to approach the 80th anniversary of the creation of the UN with real tangible achievements based on the UN Charter. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is ready to do its part. Thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the representative of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization for your intervention, and I give the floor to the Economic Commission for Africa.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I'm honored to address you on behalf of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. We are meeting when the foundation of humanity is being tested and Africa is bearing the brunt. Multiple crises have exacerbated the challenges of finance, debt, climate, and energy. 21 African countries are in or at high risk of debt distress, and public debt has increased by over 180% since 2010 and currently exceeds over 60% of GDP. Basic social expenditures are being crowded out, and there is limited access to long-term concessional finance. Furthermore, unprecedented climate effects are costing up to 5% of Africa's GDP annually. Yet, we cannot attract sufficient investments because the rules of engagement of global rating agencies do not favor Africa. We also see imbalances in borrowing costs. For example, Africa's borrowing cost is 4 times higher than the United States and even more than 4 times higher than Germany. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, justice for Africa cannot be served by an outdated global financial architecture system. Promises are either not fulfilled or half fulfilled, leaving governments frustrated, young people unemployed, and children without a future of hope and prosperity. Excellencies, if we remain theoretical on the reform of the multilateral system, it will be a disservice to the generations that come after us. Undoubtedly, then, multilateral governance structures must change. Specifically, we need increased representation for African countries, for developing countries, improved transparency, a reflection of the role of emerging and frontier markets and regional multilateral development banks. Furthermore, the finalization and implementation of the International Tax Cooperation Framework must be pursued vigorously. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Africa can be the global power force if we address the critical gaps for a fair and promising future. We must take deliberate steps to invest in our youth because 1 in 3 young people globally will be African by 2050. Therefore, investments in modernizing education systems, increasing skills in STEM, and integrating TVET in education systems is necessary. And the Global Digital Compact can offer Africa a level playing field. But we must build the necessary infrastructure to take full advantage of this. As I conclude, this is our once-in-a-lifetime chance to demonstrate to the future generations that we got it right. It is my belief that we can make it count.
I thank the representative of the Economic Commission for Africa, and I give the floor to the representative of the International Olympic Committee.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, please accept, first of all, my heartfelt congratulations on the adoption of the Pact for the Future. In particular, I would like to thank you for recognizing the role of sport as an important enabler and indeed accelerator to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The recent Olympic Games Paris 2024 illustrate in an excellent way how the International Olympic Committee is contributing to the SDGs through sport. The IOC considers peace as the most fundamental of the SDGs. This is why we are very happy and proud that despite all the geopolitical tensions, we were able to bring together the athletes from the territories of all 206 national Olympic committees and the IOC Refugee Olympic team. Before the Olympic Games, these athletes joined for a powerful call for peace. During the Olympic Games, they competed fiercely against each other. At the same time, they lived peacefully together under one roof in the Olympic Village. They shared their meals, their experiences and their emotions. They respected each other with no incidents or discrimination whatsoever, even if their countries are at war. With all this, the athletes created a culture of peace, showing us how our world would be if we all were to live in the Olympic spirit of peaceful coexistence. There were many other achievements with regard to the UN SDGs. These Olympic Games were the first ever Olympic Games with full gender parity. The IOC Refugee Olympic team participated with a record number of 37 athletes and won its first ever Olympic medal. Paris 2024 reduced its carbon emissions by 50% compared to previous Olympic Games. These are just a few examples how we at the IOC are promoting the role of sport as an important enabler and accelerator of the SDGs. We are ready to continue and strengthen this contribution of sport in the framework of the Pact for the Future, because this pact perfectly reflects our Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, together. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the International Olympic Committee, and I give the floor to the Inter-American Development Bank.
Excellencies, distinguished members, Gabriel Garcia Marquez once said in Spanish, "No es verdad que la gente deja de perseguir sus sueños porque envejecen. Envejecen porque dejan de perseguir sus sueños. Not true."
I think your interpretation.
We gather for the summit of the future, our world faces a pivotal moment that demands this youthful energy and relentless pursuit of dreams. Climate change, poverty, and hunger affect billions of people today and the future of our youth tomorrow. Even with drastic emission cuts, global economic output could shrink 19% by 2050. As climate change accelerates biodiversity loss, creating a harmful feedback loop exemplified by historic drought in the Amazon. While 2/3 of the population is under 30, 20% of young people are not working, studying, or training. In Latin America and the Caribbean, over half of the young people who are still poor. And globally, 828 million people suffer from chronic hunger, mostly women and children. But as Garcia Marquez said, a youth-like pursuit of dreams and possibilities can help turn these challenges into opportunities. It is not about problems, challenges, difficulties. It's about opportunities to create jobs, foster innovation, build a foundation for growth, prosperity that satisfies the most basic of human needs. And we need to leap, step forwards, paraphrasing Gabriela Mistral, the Chilean poet and Nobel laureate. Where there is work to be done or a challenge to be faced, it is up to us to step forward, take responsibility, and act where others may hesitate. Today, multilateral development banks are stepping up, coordinating and taking action, leading. We are leveraging our strengths to tackle the world's biggest challenges. We are collaborating like never to deliver concrete results. We agreed on 16 concrete deliverables in our published viewpoint note. We are working as a system, not any system, a system that puts people at the center. We are also working close with the UN. Today, we stand ready at the intersection of urgency and opportunity. With our actions now can redefine the future for generations.
I thank the representative of the Inter-American Development Bank. And I now give the floor to the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I stand on existing protocols and commend the Secretary General of the United Nations and his team for convening this important session. The timing of the summit is particularly significant, coming as it does at a time when our world stands at a crossroads between a path to the past where global affairs were reduced to a war of the jungle, and a road that promises a more just and peaceful world that thrives on multilateralism, collaboration, and justice. Excellencies, let us be frank with ourselves and ask the question, what is new in the Pact for the Future? The answer, Excellencies, is that there is hardly anything new in the Pact that we have not committed ourselves to in the past under the UN and other frameworks. The fact that we have come back to the same old commitments suggests that we still need greater political will to deliver on the good promises. For ECOWAS, therefore, the difference between the Pact for the Future and earlier global agreements will lie in delivering on our commitments in the areas of peace and security, sustainable socio-economic development, climate change and climate justice, as well as youth empowerment. It will also mean concrete action to promote and support our regional unity, not our disunity, our integration, not our disintegration, and a commitment not to turn Africa, especially West Africa, into a zone of proxy conflicts. If we fail to deliver once again, history will look back to this summit, not as the summit of the future, but a summit of the past. This is the choice before us. I thank you for your attention.
I want to thank the representative for the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, and I'd like to give the floor I want to give the floor. I'm sorry, I misrepresented the previous speaker.
Distinguished delegates, today we stand at a defining moment in human history, a moment when our choices will shape the future of our world for generations to come. The crises we face are complex and interconnected, challenging the very fabric of our societies and threatening our collective future. But this is also a moment to move beyond managing crisis to shaping a future grounded in resilience, sustainability, and shared prosperity. The Summit of the Future and the adoption of the Pact for the Future is our commitment to turn aspirations into action and transform challenges into catalysts for profound positive change. For the Arab region, this pact is a crucial opportunity to redefine our trajectory. It allows us to harness the transformative power of artificial intelligence, digital innovation, and predictive analytics to tackle economic volatility, social inequalities, and the escalating threats of climate change. Our region has shown time and again that we can overcome adversity through unity and decisive action. We at ESCWA are leading this transformation with a vision rooted in the core principles of this pact: resilience, inclusivity, and sustainability. We are integrating intelligent technologies and foresight methodologies into policy-making processes, transforming how governments forecast trends, assess risk, and make proactive decisions. Through advanced policy simulation tools and data-driven insights, we are equipping our member states to design policies that are not only resilient and inclusive, but also aligned with the long-term aspirations of their people. Our commitment to climate action is embedded in the Arab Climate Resilience Initiative, where we use these innovative technologies to develop robust adaptation and mitigation strategies. Looking ahead, our focus will be on fostering regional cooperation and ensuring that the benefits of digital transformation and AR are accessible to all. We will champion the development of inclusive digital economy that empower youth and women, driving the economic diversification essential for the long-term stability and prosperity of the Arab region. Excellencies, this is our moment to act with vision and courage, to turn the promise of the Pact for the Future into a reality that resonates with the aspiration of all people in the Arab region and beyond. Let us seize this opportunity to build a future that is not just better, but transformational, a future where technology and human values converge to create a world that is just, equitable, and sustainable for all. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. And I now give the floor to the Common Fund for Commodities.
Honorable President, distinguished delegates, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride that I address you today on behalf of the Common Fund for Commodities at this crucial summit of the future. We come from the innovation-rich, the Netherlands. We stand here at a defining moment in history where commodities must be transformed from mere resources into powerful catalysts for sustainable development, justice, and ethics within global value chains. Commodity dependence remains a significant challenge for developing countries, with 101 of 191 UNCTAD member states relying on primary commodities for over 60% of their exports, particularly in the great continent of Africa, where this figure reaches as high as 90%. Our pledge to reshape the world's financial architecture with concessional and de-risk finance is more critical now than ever, as it holds the key to unlocking these vital goals. Commodities are the lifeblood of many economies, especially in developing nations, where billions of smallholder farmers at the lowest income levels depend on commodities and commodity-related jobs for their livelihoods. Commodities have the potential to fuel sustainable economic growth, generate jobs, and provide vital revenues while paving the way for a greener, more equitable world. Yet when mismanaged, these very commodities can become sources of environmental devastation, social injustice, and economic fragility. Therefore, it is our moral duty to ensure that justice and ethics are woven into every step of the commodity value chain, transforming them into forces that uplift the societies, contribute meaningfully to the SDGs. The Common Fund has been a vital partner in supporting commodity-dependent countries through numerous projects. Since the adoption of our base of pyramid approach, the CFC has supported 127 projects in least developed countries alone, with a total value of about 189 million and with a direct contribution of US $105 million. These projects have created jobs, improved the livelihoods of countless farmers and smallholders. For example, in Kenya, 10 Census Africa Limited, the world's first fair trade certified macadamia nut company, expects to reach 10,000 new smallholder farmers with.
Agradezco por su intervención al representante.
I thank the representative of the Common Fund for Commodities for his statement. And I now give the floor to the African Development Bank Group.
Your Excellencies, the future we are in today was the past. The future we build for tomorrow must be based on better decisions taken today. Building that future for Africa requires more than reform of the global financial architecture. We need new institutional support systems to build a more solid and resilient future for Africa. First, we must tackle the biases in the current global credit rating systems that leads to higher costs of accessing capital for Africa than other parts of the world. The establishment of the Africa Credit Rating Agency, called for by the African Union, is critical to achieving this. Second, the global financial system does not protect Africa from contagious effects of global financial shocks. Africa is the only region of the world without a financial safety net. That's why it's critical to establish the African Financial Stability Mechanism to provide safety net for Africa. Third, we must address risks facing Africa in leveraging greater private sector financing. That's why the African Development Bank is pulling all its guarantee instruments into an African insurance and guarantee agency that will deploy risk instruments at scale to bring more investments to Africa. Fourth, we must tackle the rising insecurity in Africa and the rising expenditures on security, which are displacing financing for development. To achieve this, the African Development Bank is working with the African Union to establish security index investment bonds that will be used to tackle the reconstruction of areas damaged by conflicts. And finally, Africa's vast forests, biodiversity, and carbon sinks are the key for saving the world. It is time to properly value the green assets of Africa and include that in the GDP of Africa. Africa must move from being green and cash poor to being green rich through proper valuation of its natural capital in its GDP. These foundations will assure a much richer and wealthier Africa for future generations. They will build wealthier and a more resilient Africa and move it into a future with sound financial structures to bolster its development. The future is Africa's, and we will take it on boldly. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the African Development Bank Group, and I give the floor to the United Nations Capital Development Fund.
We're gathered here today united by a common vision, a world where sustainable development is not a privilege, but a reality for all. Public finance is insufficient to deal with the severity of constrained global fiscal spaces with economic, social, climate, and environmental crises that affect current and future generations. The SDG financing gap continues to widen, threatening to leave behind those below the poverty line, further marginalizing last-mile contexts that most need our support, particularly least developed countries, small island nations, and many other fragile settings. Addressing today's challenges, those that will jeopardize opportunities for future generations, requires more than public financing. The Pact of the Future recognizes the urgency to catalyze increased private sector investment. This is at the core of the United Nations Capital Development Fund's original GA mandate of 1966 to assist developing countries in the development of their economies by supplementing existing sources of capital assistance, adopted right here in this august chamber. In fact, this call by member states for UNCDF to help those furthest behind is even more relevant today. UNCDF is the only UN fund capable of deploying inclusive blended finance solutions at the pace and scale needed to crowd in private streams of finance at the last mile. We are responding to this call by enhancing our unique capabilities to amplify the impact of the United Nations system and the wider development community. As a non-credit rated hybrid development and finance institution, UNCDF is designed to absorb and reduce the high risks that make access to sustainable capital simply unattainable. Our grants, guarantees, and fit-for-purpose financial instruments enable UNCDF to on-ramp and catalyze investments that otherwise would be unbankable. UNCDF's impact is felt in fragile developing countries around the world today, but it needs to be scaled up. Our performance-based instruments are tied to tangible results, ensuring that scarce donor funding pays for only what works. Every dollar that we invest in local currency not only supports today's needs, it paves the way for long-term prosperity that builds on public-private partnerships. In fact, if UNCDF did not exist today, it would be created as a disruptor to foster a more inclusive development finance system. This is the role that UNCDF can play within UN System 2.0. We are a UN fund. It's a platform for partners to crowd in public and private financing, and together we can build a future so that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the representative of the United Nations Capital Development Fund, who was the last speaker of this session. The next session of the Summit of the Future will take place tomorrow, Monday, September 23rd at 9 a.m. And we will hear those who have inscribed their name on the list of speakers for that session. The meeting is adjourned.
Gracias.
We know that women are twice as likely to be in depression more than men because of the inequalities they face, because of the hard life that they face, because their rights are not, fully exercised as men. Men take their rights, for granted, while women have to continue to fight for their rights, to fight against domestic violence, to fight against violence. Even in crises and wars, we know that the brunt is paid by women and girls. So in general, I would like to say that, as I mentioned in the beginning, women are realistic, they are optimistic, and they are ready to take the lead, and we need to support them to do that.
How do I follow that? Look, let me speak frankly to mental health, because I think finally, after all these years, we put the head back on the body and didn't leave it in a corner of shame. And that is about our well-being from head to toe, and so important because today we are faced with many different challenges, and maybe what brought this back to the fore were the incidences that came in the aftermath of COVID. And COVID really did underscore how this was an intergenerational issue. More than that, I think it made us think through how much mental health, particularly women, are left to recover with for the rest of their lives in context of conflict. Terrorism, for me, a direct experience in Nigeria with Boko Haram. These are going to be girls and families that will go for the rest of their lives trying to heal. But more recently, the rapes in Ethiopia, in Tigray, in Sudan, coming across the border into Chad, with the horrors in Gaza that people are yet to come to an end with. We're still living in hope that that will happen. But also to talk about AI, the event of AI and social media and what that's bringing, wreaking havoc in many women's lives. I do want to say that there are perhaps two aspects to this that we need to bring more to the fore. One is the demographic. And first of all, to say that while we see women probably suffering more, I think that there are many more men out there that we don't know about because men don't talk about mental health. And I think the results of this are seen in gender-based violence. They're seen in many causes, the symptoms that we see in societies with women. So really a big look at both men and women, especially women. The age demographic gives us great concern because there are more young people who are coming forth with this. And a lot of it's got to do with our communities and our society, but they're stretched now with the challenges that come forth. And it's not everywhere in the world that you have your community at hand. And so therefore, people are far more susceptible to mental health. And then just not to forget the aged, because that's another demographic that survived on the community. And on society, and who would put their mother away, not unless you really had no options and you thought there was a safer and better place, but not necessarily is it. So again, the aged, which is a huge demographic of 1 billion people or so. The other side to this is the spectrum of mental health, that we don't just put it in one box. Because, from anxiety to bipolar to many mental health illnesses, they're related to the physical. And to see that and to know that actually we don't have the answers. So a lot more money needs to go into research, into the health system, to make sure that we're ready and we're prepared for this. And to say we don't know and we've got to find the solutions, and please do it with the people that are concerned. Don't prescribe, have these conversations with people that are involved in it, because then it brings me back to what Seema had said, the discrimination and the feeling that this is not something I can talk about. Same thing happened with HIV and AIDS. The same thing is happening with LGBTQI communities, and so too with mental health. Is that feeling that I cannot come out and talk about this, and therefore there are no solutions and there will be no healing to it. But and then maybe just to shout out to Gabrielle, I was in Barbados yesterday for about 3 days, and it was an amazing experience to see strong, powerful women's voices, starting from your Prime Minister, but also your parliamentarians, and those that were talking on the global supply chain to climate, and the issue of food security, and flying over Barbados and seeing scorched earth, because there's a lot of brown, so everyone is waiting for the rains and to really deal with that. So again, I'm sure climate is going to cause a lot of anxiety too. Back to the mental health.
Thank you, DSG. Thank you, Executive Director. Thanks to all our incredible guests for this conversation that really just starts us on our journey of, as we delve deeper into the data, as we learn more, as we receive the information coming from all of these intergenerational dialogues, we're looking forward to sharing that next part of the conversation. So we have this small tradition here where we end with asking each of you one word of how you're feeling right now about moving forward around We the Women. And so let me start with Seema, one word from you.
I feel optimistic, actually very optimistic, and we need to capture that.
Alice?
I feel love. I think we need more love. I think there's a lot of hate speech, a lot of discrimination. I think love and love.
Thank you. Gabrielle?
My word would absolutely be equity. Equity is the perpetual doorway to opportunity for all, so definitely equity.
And Angela?
I feel mobilized. I feel that with all the information that's coming in through the survey and the intergenerational dialogues, it's such a wonderful moment for us to all come together and think through our course of action and how to make real change.
And Deputy Secretary General, the last word.
2 words. I would say that I'm incredibly hopeful, but that the struggle continues.
The struggle continues. Thank you, DSG, and to all our guests for engaging in this critical dialogue, the first of many for We the Women. We hope the discussion has highlighted the importance of women's transformative leadership. We have many more important findings in the survey, including on issues like generative AI. In the next few weeks, there'll be more opportunities to get involved, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, please follow the links on the screen. We hope that women's voices, challenges, and perspectives will help shape global solutions for the world, starting now into the Summit of the Future, and then beyond to Beijing Plus 30, and even beyond that. Again, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Our world is fragmenting. The scourge of war and violence is growing. In this fragile world, this Olympic truce resolution is more relevant than ever.
It is so decided. The resolution is adopted.
Such a peaceful and better world is possible. It is possible if we are all truly living the Olympic motto: faster, higher, stronger, together.
No money for medical care? A doctor in Indonesia is paid in plastic recyclables. Forced sterilisation in Canada, a legacy of systemic discrimination. And contamination controversy, Germany's unresolved issue with radioactive waste.